Well, happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, October 11th, the 284th day of the year. There are only 81 days left in 2022. And welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom. So, my friend and my across the street neighbor, Marvin, was waiting on me when I returned from my Sunday morning bike ride through the neighborhood. I was looking for him. I figured he'd be waiting on me. I figured he'd have something for me. You see, Marvin and Helen have been our across the street neighbors since we moved into our home 23 years ago. We enjoy a good, cordial relationship. When I lived the first 10 years of our existence here, traveling back and forth to Los Angeles, Marvin would help me by assisting my wife with tasks when needed. He helped her install the mailbox. So when I saw Marvin Sunday morning, I wasn't surprised. You see, Marvin is a University of Georgia graduate. We tease each other over football and we let it go. There's no anger, there are no hardcore feelings. But Marvin is very creative with his teasing. Now, I get a kick out of it. I'm always interested in what he has for me when they win, which seems like all the time these last few years. This past Sunday, he met me at the end of the driveway. I grinned, he grinned. He asked, "Did you see it?" "What?" I asked. He said, "The sign." And I looked, and there it was, stuck in the ground in the yard. It read Georgia blank, Auburn blank. "You didn't fill it in," I responded. He said, "This way we can use it over and over," he responded. I brought the sign home and put it in the garage as he requested. Perhaps our most fun teasing came on a Saturday when Georgia won. And Marvin left one of his notes in my mailbox on a Saturday when several of my old teammates were visiting. And they were all really, really big guys. And Marvin is a slightly built man. I gathered up the guys, all six of us, and we paid Marvin a visit. When Helen, Marvin's wife, answered the door, I said in a very stern voice, "We're looking for Marvin." She laughed and went and got him. "Marvin," I addressed him in a rough voice, "these guys want to know if it was you who left that note in my mailbox. They didn't like it. They all played at Auburn." He looked at the guys who all had serious, stern looks on their faces, and for the first time, he didn't get the joke. The guys all burst out laughing, and Marvin still talks about it to this day. He's told me that he's told that story many and many a time. I don't mind his teasing. My fallback is always, "Well, Marvin, during my time at Auburn, we were 3-1 against Georgia. Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. I'll save the sign for next year." Our G-List guest today is Giles, author of Birmingham Golden Years of High School Basketball. Chris is from Birmingham, Alabama. He graduated from UAB and played for the legendary basketball coach Gene Bartow. He was a college coach for 30 years, started with UAB, Jackson State University, Alcorn State University, and he was head coach at Miles College. He was drafted by the New Jersey Nets, which is now the Brooklyn Nets, in 1982 in round 5. He's the 105th player chosen. We're looking forward to chatting with Chris this morning. So, this edition of Tuesdays with Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl consulting firm. Best Girl has been providing customized solutions to executive issues for 34 years. Let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
That fits your needs. So, let's get to our roundtable regulars, Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker, and see what they've got for us this morning. Barbara Wallace Edwards, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Thom. I'm doing well, and how are you today?
I'm doing very well. What's going on in your world?
Well, Tom, I want to first offer condolences to the family of one of my longtime friends and neighbors, Mr. Bob Price. Um, we've been neighbors for 24 years, and Bob passed away on last week as a result of a short-term illness. But he and his wife, Karen, welcomed me with open arms when we moved into this neighborhood 24 years ago. So the funeral services are actually today. I'm hoping to get a chance to attend, but my condolences to the family. And I want to also offer congratulations to the princess of Best Girl, Dr. Joyce Gilligassam. Um, Joyce she's been selected to the Illinois State University College of Education Alumni Hall of Fame. And the award ceremony is going to be this coming week. So congratulations, Dr. Joyce Gilligassam. Tom, other than that, I don't have a lot going on. It's I watched that game on Saturday, and I'm just praying for our Auburn Tigers.
Well, you should have watched the game last night. That was a much better game. That was a real game.
I heard it was.
Where both teams were playing to win. And nobody did a fake punt from their own 30-yard line.
That's a good thing.
So it's like, okay,
what was the final score?
Trying to win a game.
I know. What was the final score of that game? Do you remember?
I think they won by 1 point.
Wow.
Kansas City did.
Yeah. That had to have been a great game.
I was going to say Oakland. The Raiders, I don't know what this obsession is with going for two, but they were behind by 1 point. And instead of kicking the extra point,
they went for two.
They went for two. And
wow.
And then they got the ball back, and they got down to 4th down and 1 yard to go. And I just noticed how they lined up, and I said, man, I think they're gonna go deep because this guy's got one-on-one coverage on the outside. Right. And they went deep, and the two receivers ran into each other.
Oh,
and the ball just hit the ground, and the game was over.
Wow. Yeah, that had to be a really good game.
They took a gamble, and it didn't work.
Didn't work.
All right, let's see what Michael Walker's got to say this morning. Good morning, Michael Walker.
Good morning, Thom Gossam and Barbara Wallace Edwards. How are you?
Good morning, sir. Doing well, thank you.
How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. I'm proud to say that I did not watch one play of the Auburn-Georgia game. I was as far away from Georgia as I could be, and Athens in particular. I was in Dallas, Texas for the weekend.
You
scheduled during the game.
Scheduled your meeting to be out of town when they play.
That's right.
So let me ask you something. You said you were in Dallas. You went by the Kennedy Memorial, I assume. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. They do have a memorial that's dedicated to the 35th President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and the memorial itself is about 30 feet high with an open roof, and it's made like it's in a square, and you can go into it. And the design of it was to allow people to go there and think, contemplate or pontificate, whatever word you want to use. And it's just like the wall with the sky that's open, so it's limitless in your thoughts and what have you. And it's pretty interesting, and it's right downtown Dallas. And I also had the opportunity to go to the depository, the building, and visit the 6th floor where it's alleged that Lee Harvey Oswald fired the shots that killed President Kennedy. And I have to say that it was very interesting. It was very detailed. I was surprised with the quality of this and being able to go there. And you remember, and I know we were all very young when this happened, but you saw the images on TV of this building and the window that he fired the shot, and all the boxes was stacked up there on the 6th floor. They had those boxes there. They were enclosed in glass, and you could go and look out the very window that he shot from. And on the streets are X marks where the president was hit. And there are 3 X's, and 2 are right side by side. The first shot went through his shoulder, and went on to hit the governor, Conley of Texas at the time. And I guess the second shot missed, but the third shot is a little further down the street, and there's an X there where the shot went in the back of his head. I also got a chance to see the grassy knoll, because there was some thought that there was a fourth shot that came from the grassy knoll. So I got a chance to see that. So it's just walking in history, and the type of history that changed the projection of the world, you know. So it was, and they told the story about him coming to Dallas and the days leading up to that. And he had been to Austin and been to Houston, and he was warned not to go to Dallas because Dallas was very conservative, and there were not a lot of people that liked his policies and what have you. And I recall reading originally that, you know, he was riding in a Lincoln Continental that was that had a drop top on it, convertible, and they had once talked about putting a bulletproof bubble on. And he didn't want to do that because he wanted to be out with the people, and he was known for going off script when he landed and going shaking hands with everybody and people just reaching out. He did that when he flew in. When he and Jackie got off, he went straight to the crowd, and he said he wanted to be amongst the people. And unfortunately, he was assassinated. But to be able to go through that and see that, and they had the wedding ring of Lee Harvey Oswald, because you may not remember that, but they said that I think he and his wife maybe were having some difficulty, but that morning he took his wedding band off and left it on the side table. And that was reported. I remember hearing that. And it was a Russian-made wedding band. And they had that on display, the ring that he left that morning when he went to carry out the deed.
I think if you, well, one thing I'm glad you did say alleged, because a lot of that stuff didn't add up to one guy doing it.
Yeah, it still doesn't.
But I was in the 6th grade, and I went to Catholic school, and the nun came on the internet and said that the president of the United States had been shot and that we should all pray for it. And people, and I mean, it was maybe 10 minutes later, she came back on and said the president was dead. Man, people were crying. People came and got their kids out of school and took them home. And it was just, it's probably the most tragic thing that could have happened to you as a kid, to know that the president of the United States had been shot. Pretty tragic. I haven't been to that. I'd like to go. I think I'll make a trip out there.
I would definitely recommend it. I think you would be really impressed with how great of a job they did. They even had a miniature replica of the setting that day, and they had these strings that went from the depository to the car to show you the flight pattern of the bullets. But again, you know, as I said before, there was some talk that there was a fourth shot. Somebody heard a fourth shot, but they could never determine where that fourth shot came from.
Well, and you had about, I don't know, at least a dozen people pointing to the grassy knoll.
Yes.
Where, you know, and so, you know, you're going to believe the report or you're going to believe your lying eyes.
Right.
So,
as a matter of fact, one of my colleagues that were there with me, his brother is some type of marksman in the state of Iowa that's won all these championships. And he went there and said, there's no way that Lee Harvey Oswald could have used that rifle, because, you know, it had that lever that you pull up and
bolt, single bolt action. Right.
Yeah. He says there's no way that he could have fired that many shots in that short of time and been
accurately.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. So
that's one that, you know, when you think about the 60s, 63 and 68, you know, Kennedys, the two Kennedys and Martin Luther King, 64 Malcolm. I mean, it changed the whole trajectory of our country. And maybe we wouldn't have had a person like this former president we had that won't go away.
Right.
So what do you guys think about Coach Tuberville and his latest comments? between Coach Tuberville and Herschel, I don't know.
I don't know either, Tom.
One's a coach and one's a player. But can we blame it on CTE? Who knows?
Oh,
I
man,
think we
tell you
just have to
what.
blame that on ignorance, Tom. I'm not sure all of that could be CTE. But,
Yeah, I think I have to agree with Barbara on that. It's just ignorance, especially in Tuberville's case. I don't think he played enough football to get CTE.
No.
But anyway, he certainly doesn't look like he ever played football at all.
He doesn't.
If you see him in person. But I think one thing that I found interesting, he made those comments about reparations and what have you, which has a tinge of racism or
Racism.
It is not tinge of racism. It's blatant racism.
It was flat out racism.
Exactly.
And when you think about it, Tom, he was head coach at Auburn, and he had all of these African-American players that he coached. And one person said he made tens of millions of dollars off of unpaid Black athletes at Auburn University.
That's right.
And, and I think about Jason Campbell, who was a quarterback that Tuberville got to cut a promo for him, and interesting. So it's just funny that he has no conscience that he would stand up and do that. And then he turns around and does a recording. Well, he did a bipartisan piece of legislation with Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia regarding the peanuts and agriculture and farmers and what have you. So he's just kind of like all over the place.
He is. And, like you were saying, Michael, he literally has his statue, his popularity, because people, and particularly Black players, went out there and, assumed the risk and incurred the risk of concussions and playing hard and gave their blood, sweat, and bone-crushing equity to and everything else to get him to where he is today. For him to make statements like that, that's just, to me, it's just outlandish.
I'd be willing to bet you he probably doesn't even know what he said. He probably was reading it off a piece of paper somebody gave him, and that was the message that they thought was the best message for those people. Where was he? In the Midwest somewhere?
In
Iowa. Where was he? Iowa?
Nevada, wasn't he?
I don't know. One of those,
somewhere out west.
Yeah, that he just felt like they felt like this was the message, and he was the messenger.
Yeah.
So,
they've asked him about it since that time.
I kind of agree with you on that he probably didn't know what he was saying, didn't think about it, especially somebody that didn't know the three branches of government that was running for Senate.
Didn't know the Voting Rights Act.
Didn't know the Voting Rights Act. So how the hell he knows what he's talking about over here? So.
He may not have known initially, but they've asked him about that since he actually made the statement. And he said he has no reason to apologize. He stands by what he said, and he believes that. So, after the fact, he may not have known initially, but after the fact, surely he recognizes what he said.
Well, and I say may not have known.
Mm-hmm.
He may not understand the depth.
Now that's true.
Of what he said.
Yeah.
Because he just doesn't seem to be, the sharpest tool in the toolbox.
That's true.
And we saw him in Auburn, 3-4 weeks ago in the hotel. And he had a little crowd around him, but the majority of the people didn't even pay him any attention. He's yesterday's news as far as they're concerned.
Right.
And, so it's unfortunate. I don't know. I just think that there's nothing anybody could give me to make me get up and do something like that.
I agree, Tom.
Whether it's reparations or whether it's talking about the Ku Klux or whatever, it just wouldn't make any.
Yeah, that's basically like selling your soul.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Barb, you got anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, something really quick. The three major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, has announced plans that will provide relief for 16 million Americans with debt relief. You know that people that do not have insurance and get sick, it affects your credit scores if you're not able to pay it and you don't have insurance, and it causes all kinds of problems. Well, So they announced these grand plans to relieve people that and remove that from their credit scores. Well, it's only $500, number one. And number two, according to the information, it may not really impact the people that need it most, because $500 usually end up being co-insurance or co-payments.
Right.
And it doesn't really get into the nitty gritty. And so we are still going to have to really look at the expansion of Medicaid, because poor people are people that do not have insurance and they don't make enough money to afford it, and they live in a state that hasn't expanded Medicaid. They're the ones that caught, and then they get these high debts. And one young lady had cancer that lived in North Carolina. I think it was breast cancer. Well, because she had cancer, she was able to qualify for Medicaid. But once it went into remission, she was removed from Medicaid, and there was all these follow-up appointments that amounted to $50,000.
Wow.
That's on her credit report. And now she can't get a job, can't get an apartment, because when people go to apply for a job, they look at your credit report as a judge of your character. But if you're caught up in that situation, that has no bearing on your character. You was just poor and didn't have insurance. So I think something's got to be done with that.
So true.
Okay. Thank you. Barbara?
I think that's all I have, Thom.
Okay. Let me, Michael, let me run this by you. I did my little opening statement about Marvin, my across the street neighbor, and how he and I tease about Georgia and Auburn. And I know you live over there, and you don't tease very well.
I do not.
Michael said, that's not funny.
So when I came back on the bicycle, he was standing out there, and I knew he would be out there, you know. Marvin's like, what, 80 something or whatever, and he's been sick recently, so I always look for him because, like I said, he's been a great neighbor. And he walked out there. He said, "Well, did you see it?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "The sign." And I looked down in his yard. He stuck the sign down in his yard, and we had a laugh. But that day, he came over and put that thing in the mailbox. And I mean, it was like 6 guys we had all played. I mean, all up with 250 plus, you know. And Marvin's probably 150. And I said, "Marvin, these guys didn't like that sign you left in my mailbox. They all played it off." His eyes got big. And then they started laughing, and he started laughing.
I'll tell you something funny.
He tells that story over and over again.
That's hilarious. But speaking of which, nobody from Georgia has brought that game up to me. Nobody. As a matter of fact, my driver who took me to the airport, he picked me up Sunday night. He didn't bring up that game at all, and he's an Alabama grad. All he said about Alabama was, "Well, we squeaked one out." That was it. Nothing.
Yeah, I watched that Alabama game too. They did squeak that out.
I noticed that. I guess a lot of other people realize that about me. I don't tease well when it comes to Auburn and football and what have you like that. So nobody, not even people that know me very well, have brought that game up at all to me. And that's a good thing.
That is a good thing, Michael.
It was not. I mean, it was pitiful, actually, on Auburn's part. It was really sad. And I don't know where they're going.
The first quarter was decent, Thom.
Well, we always do that in the first quarter.
Yeah.
You know, but unfortunately, a game is 4 quarters.
Unfortunately. I mean, but even at halftime, the game wasn't out of reach to us. 14-0. But second half, bless their heart.
You know what? Michael, did you were on the road probably. You didn't see that game last night, did you?
No.
So Kansas City gets down to the 3-yard line or something like that. Kelsey lines up at the tight end on the right. Guy goes in motion to the right. They hike the ball. Mahomes rolls out to the right. Kelsey goes back through the end zone to the left, ends up on the other side. Mahomes pulls up and throws him the ball. Ball doesn't travel more than 5 yards. Right. And that's what I keep talking about mean, just something that makes people think.
Think
When
right,
I watched, what I saw the other day was the defense never has to react to more than one move.
right,
You
right,
know, so in this case, the Raiders defense had to react to the right, had to think, and it's
hmm
like, oh, then they got to go back to the left.
right, right,
That's complicated for Auburn's offense.
right.
You know, it's just go to the right and I'll throw it, and it ain't
You
working
know,
so far.
people are
So
calling for the offensive coordinator and the offensive line coach to then maybe they should let them go. They're not going to get rid of the head coach, then maybe some changes need
well,
to be
it's pretty
made at
bad. I
those other
don't know.
positions. But I think both of those gentlemen, at least the offensive coordinator, I think is good friends with Coach Harrison. They've been
Oh
friends
yeah,
since
they came with him, didn't
elementary
they?
school or something. Yeah, I think they've been friends forever. So
Well,
he's probably
I'll
not
just
going to get rid
say
of him.
if they're getting the NIL, they need to have the pay docked.
That's right.
Well,
So
Thom,
go
we
ahead.
talked about that issue, and Barbara saying that they may not get rid of the head coach until these other players go. I understand your perspective, Barbara, but I respectfully disagree. I think the head coach needs to go
I
because
don't
he has,
disagree with you.
yeah, I know, he
Yeah,
has the final say so over what play is called.
I agree.
And this play of punting the ball on your own 34, and he will not punt it. He'll go for it. See, I can't even say it right because it
Right.
doesn't make sense logically. You own your own 34, and
Right.
it's fourth down and
Right.
6, and you refuse to punt the ball. You decide to go for it.
And
You
the
know,
game just
With
started.
the
I mean, we're in the first
with the
quarter.
bad play.
yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't even a good play that you call. I mean, if you'd had a
Yeah.
decent play, you may have could have made it, but like
That's
everybody,
why
anybody could have figured that out. I've
I
never
don't get
played
all
football, and
spun
I
up
could have
over it.
figured that play out if I was a defense.
That's why I don't get spun up over it. It's like I told Marvin at the end. I said, Marvin, when I played, we were 3-1 against Georgia. So I can hang my hat on that
That's
every
right.
year till we win again.
That's right.
you like the Miami Dolphins, Thom. You pop that champagne when
That's
nobody
right.
goes undefeated throughout the playoffs, right?
That's right. That's right. Anyway, all right. Well, we're going to move on. Thank you, guys. Let's get Sean in here. Sean, you got a minute for us today?
Good morning. My name is Sean Jones, and this has Got a Minute. Hello to everyone joining in with us this morning. I woke up today feeling large, in charge, and ready to take on the world. And I'm sure you all are like, well, what's gotten into Sean? What is she so happy about? Well, I'll tell you. This morning, I attended Moms and Muffins with my son at his school, an annual event similar to Dads and Donuts, where the moms come out to spend quality time with their babies and muffins. In other news, this week we acknowledge World Mental Health, an international day for global mental health education, awareness, and advocacy against social stigma. It was first celebrated in 1992 at the initiative of the World Federation of Mental Health, a global mental health organization with members and contacts in more than 150 countries. Each October, thousands of supporters come to celebrate this annual awareness program to bring attention to mental illness and its major effects on people's lives worldwide. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Sean Jones, and this has Got a Minute.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, well, let's move on to the G list. Hollywood's got the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Tom, we have the G list. Our G list guest today is Chris Giles. Chris Giles is the author of Birmingham Golden Years of High School Basketball, and they were golden years. Let me tell you, there was some unbelievable basketball being played during this era. And I'll let Chris tell you about the era. Chris is from Birmingham. He graduated from UAB and played for the legendary basketball coach, Gene Bartow. He was a college coach for 30 years. He started with UAB, coached at Jackson State, Alcorn, and he was the head coach at Miles College. He was drafted by the New Jersey Nets, who is now the Brooklyn Nets. In 1982, he was drafted in the fifth round, and he has highlighted some of the greatest players in Birmingham. And this is, I think, one of the things we'll get into is its pre-integration, so to speak. So let's bring Chris on and let's have a conversation. Good morning, Chris Giles.
Good morning, Tom.
How you
Thanks for having
doing?
me on the show. Everything is good, man. It's great to be alive and it's great to be here amongst friends.
Okay, and so you're retired. You tell me.
Yes, I am. I've been retired for a year, and right now I'm doing a little part-time work at Huffman Middle School and school detention person. So I got all the little kids that I'm trying to change their lives and add values to their life again.
Well, good deal. That's a great thing. That's great. So, what gave you the inspiration for this book?
Well, Tom, I love sports, former athlete, and I decided to do something that has never been done in Birmingham. And so I had an idea, a friend and I, and Willie Brown kind of helped me with this idea. I decided to do something. When our coaches and elderly leave, they take their library with them. What I mean by their library, all the history that they have, all the things that they know, they never put it down in paper. And I just decided that I wanted to do something. I didn't I didn't do the book complete because I couldn't get all the information, from the newspaper, the archives, and I couldn't get all the information for the individual that I wanted to put in the book. I want to do a 10-year span on high school basketball in Birmingham. In the 30s and 40s, they said Birmingham was a baseball town. In the 50s and 60s, they said Birmingham was a football town. But Tom, as you know, in the 70s, basketball took off after integration. After Wendell Hudson entered the University of Alabama, things kind of changed. But I want to give credit to Henry Harris, who attended Auburn, James Owens, and guys like yourself. But once the black athletes started going to the state university and white university, things changed, especially in Birmingham, for as basketball was concerned. Wendell set the tone, and after that, it seemed like everybody said, hey, these guys going to be all right. And so they started recruiting a lot of the inner city athletes, and they went down there and they changed the culture at the University of Alabama. And knowing and playing against a lot of those guys like Reginald King and knowing Buck Johnson, Enos Watley, and played with the great Oliver Robinson at UAB and with Norman Ankrum. So Birmingham had a lot of talent. Not only were these guys talented, but they was intelligent. If you look at the city of Birmingham, to be a small city, we had 39 people drafted out of Birmingham between the 70s and 80s. Most of them came from the local high school. Every high school in Birmingham had someone drafted or played in the NBA except for two high schools, and that were Banks and Ensley. And, of course, Age Parker High School had the most with 8. So I thought that was significant. I thought there was a lot of history. And a lot of kids, they don't know the history of high school basketball in Birmingham. The iconic Fair Park Arena was an arena during the civil rights where they, put African Americans in there and locked them up. It was more of a jail. But that's where the games was played at. And those same beds that most of the people that were marched in the civil rights that they put in, they were still there. When we used to go up there and wait on other teams to play and leave during the tournament, we used to sit up there. So it's a lot of history. Birmingham has a lot of history, even with civil rights. But again, with sports and athletics, it's a lot of history. And I think a lot of these guys need to be recognized. I started with the late 60s, again with Wendell Hudson. And once I got started, everybody was coming to me. They wanted to let me know about the early 60s. Well, I don't know a whole lot of people in the early 60s that played basketball in high school, so it was hard for me to write about something I didn't know. And then trying to find information, we don't do a good job of archiving and getting information or holding information. So I did a lot of research. It was a 2-year process. The COVID kind of slowed me down. So I decided just to go and put it out there. What you see on the cover of the book are a lot of great players, starting with Alan Murphy. He's probably one of the greatest high school basketball player that ever played from the city of Birmingham. And then you have Reginald King and the great T.R. Dunn and Enos Wiley, so on and so on. But every high school was represented by somebody on the front of the cover. And then in the back of the page, you have Larry Keenan, who is from Birmingham, Alabama, played at Ulmer High School. A lot of people didn't know what happened to Larry Keenan, but he went to junior college after he left Ulmer. Then he went to Memphis, where he helped lead Memphis to the Final Four with Gene Bartow. And it's ironic, Gene Bartow come to UAB, builds a program at Ulmer High School, the same school that Larry Keenan attended. So, it's just so much history correlated to this book. Again, Wendell Hudson, the first African-American athlete to attend the University of Alabama. If you ask that question, most people say it was a football player, John Mitchell, somebody.
Yep.
But it was Wendell Hudson. And not only Wendell Hudson, he's the only athlete to have his number and jersey retired at the University of Alabama. The only athlete. No football player, no Joe Namath, no Ken Stabler. And it's just hard to believe an African-American guy from A.H. Parker High School accomplished so much in a little time, but it's a credit to all those guys because we followed in their footsteps. And they made our life a little easier because if they didn't do the right thing when they entered these particular universities, that's including you, Thom. You inspired us. And like you said, I met you when I was a freshman. You was a young guy, coaching football. Y'all had a great staff coming in there. But you kind of changed our lives. You guys added value to our life because I didn't know what I was going to do as a 15-year-old kid entering high school. And I just had an opportunity to play for a legendary coach in Cap Brown. One time he was an all-time winningest coach in America, had great teams. I didn't feel like they did him justice either because, Thom, you can remember this. Cap Brown is the only coach in the United States. And I'm down at the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame fighting to try to get him in the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. He's in the High School Hall of Fame, but he should be in the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. For this reason, Cap is the only guy to coach 6 basketball players that was drafted or played in the NBA, including myself.
Wow.
He coached 7 baseball players that played in the Major League Baseball. He had 3 to go first round. Alvin McGrew, Carlos May, and he had this kid, his last kid, his name was Charles Rice at Pittsburgh. There's nobody in the country has ever done this. And this guy, his whole life was sitting around Parker High School and athletics. And also he was a high school and college official in basketball, football, and umpiring baseball. So this guy put a lot of energy in. He touched a lot of lives, man. He coached Buck Buchanan also. That was his first year over at Parker. He coached Buck Buchanan. So, I'm down there, and that's what I'm saying about our history, because it's not written anywhere, and you can't defend it a little bit. But one thing about Parker High School, they kept good records. And all these other schools, they didn't. And I went to Parker High School, and I pulled out a lot of information. And my next book going to be about Cap Brown. That's going to be my next book.
Well, I'll say this. I when I came over there, I graduated from Auburn, and Bubba Thompson, who was the principal, invited me over, and I ended up Andrew Jackson, who's been on the show. We coached the team, and there was just something really special about Parker. And when I'm looking at these names, just the schools, and this was kind of pre-integration. Wendell had gone, but the high schools were still they still played black basketball in the high school that way.
They sure did.
They were getting up and down the court. And if I just look at the numbers you gave me, guys from Birmingham high schools who were drafted, Parker had 8, Carver had 4, Jackson Olin had 3, Hayes had 4, Jones Valley had 3, and West End had 2. I mean, they were playing some back, and it was so much fun to go to one of those games. I went to John Carroll, and so we weren't very good, but we had a couple of guys who ended up playing at a higher level. But what was so much fun was at John Carroll, we went to play Ullman at Ullman. We
Mm-hmm.
played Parker at Parker, and Parker came to John Carroll and played at our gym. And so
Wow.
it was new, it was interesting, and these guys, I mean, I've gone through this thing, and I saw Willie Paulk in here, and I just started grinning because they would always put me on Willie Paulk, and he had a kick jumper like
Yes,
Dick
sir.
Barnett.
Yes, sir.
If he and our coach, me and him didn't get along, and so he would put me out. He'd let Willie Paulk get hot, and then he'd want me to go check him. It's like, man, you gotta let me check him from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Let him get hot, man. Shit, ain't nobody gonna stop him there. So, anyway, you're right. It just brought back a lot of memories, and I don't want to. Let's get Barbara and Michael in here and ask a couple questions. And we'll come back because I could talk about this all day. Barbara.
Good morning, Chris. How are you this morning?
Good, Barbara. Glad to see you.
Good, thank you. I was here in Birmingham when Coach Bartow came to UAB, and I remember all of the excitement about building that program and how people were just, excited to have a major coach coming to the Birmingham area and getting started. Tell us what was it like to be playing for the legendary coach Gene Bartow?
Well, it was very exciting. I transferred back. My first year, I went to Southern Illinois University. UAB didn't have a basketball team. And then I came back, transferred back. I was supposed to be going to Auburn. My coach died in a hotel fire at Auburn University. His name was Paul Lambert. And so I was out of a scholarship. And I kind of just walked on at UAB and met Coach Bartow. He was different. He was one of those guys that knew how to build a program, knew how to get the community involved. A lot of things that UAB did at the time, they promoted everything they did toward the black community.
Yes.
When it came to tickets, free tickets, people getting in, people coming to the game. So Birmingham felt like UAB was their basketball team.
Oh, yes.
This was ours. We couldn't be Auburn, we couldn't be Alabama, but UAB was ours. And they had great support. And we played at the Civic Center. People came out. And then we had a lot of local players on my team. Oliver Robinson was the first athlete to get a scholarship at the University of Alabama, became a great player, and I transferred back in Norman Ankrum. So we had a lot of kids that came from the local high school. So we had support. And anytime, and then he recruited a lot of guys from Memphis. They really got it started. They really did. And those guys did a great job. And then we had a guy by the name of Keith McCall, who transferred from Alabama. He kind of got it going. He played 1 year, and UAB went to the NIT, so it was a start. But nobody knew what was going to happen next. And so that third year in existence, hey, we got caught on fire. The team, somehow we came together and started playing great basketball, and then we went to the Sweet 16. We lost to Indiana, who had Isaiah Thomas, the great Isaiah Thomas. They went on to win the national championship. Then everybody in Birmingham felt like they was on to something. And they really were. And then they didn't know the attitude and the confidence that team had. So the next year, we started out pretty good. We was ranked. UAB had never been ranked. And we went on to the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 again. No team in the state of Alabama had never went to the Sweet 16, then the Elite 8. So in 4 years, the program had progressed. And then we played the great Ralph Sampson. We beat him in Birmingham. People still come up to me today and say, hey, I remember when y'all played Virginia, and you guys, I was at the game. So it's 1 million people, Thom, that have been at that game.
Well, I'm one of them.
I was there as well.
I was there too.
Oh, yeah.
I was there too.
Yes.
And the crazy thing about that game, Thom, because we had never experienced this. Only somebody experienced this is Coach Bartow now. He the only body been to the Final Four, him and Lee Hunt. He's the only coach that been to the NCAA, so we didn't know the excitement that this thing carried. And then to have it was set up for Coach Bartow. Life is good because the tournament was in Birmingham at the Civic Center.
Right.
So all we had to win was one game in Nashville, and at that time the NCAA was giving byes. So we were lucky enough to get a bye. And so we had to win one game, so we playing Indiana, defending national champ. And we just smoked them in Nashville. They didn't have Isaiah Thomas. and we kind of went to work on them, and we came back to Birmingham. So the whole city is buzzing. You know,
Yes.
you got Ralph there, 3-time, 2-time at that time, Player of the Year, 7'4". We hadn't seen a creature like this. Nobody has down south. But we went in there and we did what we had to do. And Birmingham, and see, Coach Bartow brought that national spotlight.
Yeah,
You know,
he
Bell
did.
Bryant used to play at Legion Field, and everybody, the Iron Bowl and all that, and it brought a lot of attention to Birmingham. But Coach Bartow, because of the schedule, we played DePaul, which they was always good and ranked. He brought spotlight to Birmingham, and then at the time we had Mayor Arrington, first black mayor
Yes.
in Birmingham. He was always sitting in the stand. Wherever the TV was, wherever the big game was, Matt Arrington had a nice seat there, and they always put that spotlight on him. So they were showing the positive thing of Birmingham. Kind of like in Dallas, after John F. Kennedy got shot, there was so much negativity that Dallas had to do something to change their image. Well, with Birmingham and UAB, they had to change their image, and we had a black mayor, and Coach Bartow was a good salesman, great salesman. He knew how to put a team together. He knew how to put a schedule together. And he knew how to get people rallied around the program. And it started with the African American. I don't care what nobody said.
It did.
Yes.
You know, Chris, I think too, there were people like me who had graduated from Auburn, but was from Birmingham. And so UAB was our team too.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Regardless
And-
of which school we went to, because they were Birmingham, any resident of Birmingham, I think we just felt like that was our team.
Exactly. And we used to wear Birmingham on our chest when it started out. Before it became UAB, everything was Birmingham. The colors were Birmingham colors, the green and gold, and it was so much fun to see people excited. It was something brand new, has never been done before, and would never be done, Tom. The third year in the Sweet 16, the fourth year in the Elite 8, and you're playing for a national championship regardless, Nothing to get football at UAB. They're trying to build football, but they'll never be in the playoff. Like they extended to about 48 teams or something like in basketball. So, but basketball was the driving engine in the city of Birmingham. Playing in the largest arena in the state. It was great.
And
So I enjoyed my
especially
stay,
when
man.
And they got you guys. They got Birmingham guys on the team.
Right.
That just made such a big difference. And
Exactly.
you're right. That Memphis connection. It was just. You probably could have interviewed me about the history because I could tell you a lot of. So, Barbara, you got some questions for Chris?
I think it's Michael's turn. I just asked that question.
Michael.
Yes, Chris. One name that you didn't bring up, I call him the real Boston Strangler, Andrew Toney. Was he not in that time frame during that time?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the year we went to the NIT back in '79, we played. No, it was '80. We played against Andrew Toney. They didn't want to knock UAB out the tournament. Now, a funny story about Andrew Toney. Andrew and I went to elementary school together at Wilkinson Elementary here in Birmingham. And his sister went to Parker High School, Thomasine Toney. And Andrew always been a great athlete now. But see, in elementary school, his 8th grade year, we didn't have a basketball team. And but my 8th grade year, we had a basketball team. And Andrew was a year older than me. So he followed our PE coach to Glenn High School. And so everybody was talking about this kid putting up 40 and 50 points. And, we kind of lost touch with each other. And next thing I know, we called him Foo in high school. Because when he shot the ball, he always said, Foo. That means two, Foo, all the time. So Andrew, but the funny thing in elementary, when everybody was getting athletic trophies, Andrew was getting the academic trophies. He was a smart guy. Very intelligent. And when he left Birmingham and went to South, because everybody thought he was going to Alabama. And Alabama had some great guards. I played with one, Robert Scott, and they had Kent Looney, and they had Otis Bida, who beat us in the championship. He ended up going to North Alabama. And But when Andrew got that Mr. Basketball, he changed his mind. He said, I'm going to Southwest Louisiana. And they promised him that he's going to be the next Bo Lamar, and they're going to let him shoot all the balls. And that was right down Andrew Alley, man. And he represented the city of Birmingham well with the Philadelphia 76ers.
He did.
Hadn't been for injuries, ain't no telling how far he would have gone, you know.
Right.
But he had a lot of feet injuries and things of that nature. But a great guy, super guy. He finally got inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame a couple of years ago.
Good.
And, you know, in basketball, the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, I think they got about 16 players in basketball. And this year we finally got Larry Keenan on the ballot. And I just don't know what took so long. Because like I said, they don't follow us when it comes to basketball. They don't know the history. And Keenan should have been in. The only other decorated person more than him is probably Charles Barkley when it comes to basketball. Keenan, he won 2 championships with Dr. J in the ABA. He was in the slam dunk contest, and he also played with George Gervin and Dr. J. So
Special K was his nickname, wasn't it? Special K.
Yeah, Special K. So, you know, but Andrew was a fun guy, Michael. He was nobody liked to play with him in the summertime. He shot all the ball.
Yeah, he was a shooter now.
What I remember about him was when Pat Riley was coaching the Lakers, he said in the last 2 minutes of a ball game, Andrew Toney was the most feared man in the NBA.
Yeah.
Oh no, ain't no question about it, man.
Yeah.
He would jumpstart the 76ers, man. He might come down here 20 in the first quarter. And you know the Boston, they were scared of him. Boston Strangler. When I used to go to Boston, I had to talk about the Boston Strangler. They said, you must be from Birmingham. I said, yes, sir. Birmingham Pride, baby. We had Birmingham Pride with Andrew Toney.
That's why I called him the original Boston Strangler.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If you just look at the guys, I mean, Ennis, Enimo. I remember somebody told me, first time I heard about the Enimo show, I said, what y'all talking about? So it's like, you got to go see it.
Oh, yeah.
It was incredible. He was incredible.
Yeah.
Hey, let me tell you something else, Tom. Speaking of basketball, with all the great players, Enimo kind of put basketball on a national scale. You know what I'm saying? We had a lot of great players, but they didn't get that real national pub until Enimo got there. Like McDonald's All-American. I got a picture of him with Michael Jordan and all these guys. Ennis Watley really put Birmingham on the map for the youth game and the what they call it when they play AAU basketball. See, they win the national championship. Eric Richardson and Ennis Watley and those guys. And Charles Barkley couldn't even make the team. A lot of people don't even know. He couldn't even make their team, the AAU team. So, but these guys put Birmingham on the map at an early age, and then came Buck Johnson. I mean, we just had people just coming, man. It was just unbelievable. You know, one player after another, you know, and they all elevated and cultivated the state university. Now, there's one guy I like to talk about a little bit. His name was Anthony Hicks. He went to Ramsey High School. He played at Xavier High School. He went there and changed the culture of their basketball. And they gave him so much credit. This guy, he was a great citizen, great student, and he was a great player. And then Hayes High School had a guy named Harold Robinson that went to Lincoln University. He did the same thing. So I feel like it was 4 basketball players from the Birmingham City School. Oliver Robinson changed the culture at UAB. Wendell Hudson changed the culture at the University of Alabama. Anthony Hicks changed the culture at Ramsey High School. And Harold Robinson changed the culture at Lincoln University.
Wow. Yeah, it was. I don't know. I can tell you. So let me ask you this: most of the guys that you've mentioned, especially the earlier ones, it was pre-high school basketball integration. How did high school basketball integration change the game? You know, because some of these schools end up closing, and it just sort of threw everything off. You got some thoughts about that? You're losing. Everybody's frozen. I
No,
might have just
I'm still
moved
No,
here.
we're
on you.
here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris?
Mm.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. I guess they'll bring him back in. But yeah, these guys, I mean, these guys were like, they weren't on television, but they were like
Right,
stars, man. You
right.
know,
And
Alan
Tom,
Murphy went to Louisville. Go ahead.
right. I was gonna say I haven't read his book, but yeah, I remember one player that played at Auburn that was from the Birmingham area, Wayne Baltimore Bracy.
Baltimore
Was it? I don't
Bracy.
know if he's
That's right.
mentioned in the book or not, but yeah,
I don't know if he is. Let me. He was from Hayes,
yes, from
Right.
Hayes High
Hayes High
School.
School.
Yes,
He said, "My name is Wayne, but they call me Baltimore."
they called me Baltimore. we called him the mayor at Auburn. So
Yeah.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
he was
Bracy had shoulders like a linebacker without shoulder
did.
Yeah,
pads.
he did.
He
Yeah, he
didn't need
did.
shoulder pads. He was so wide and everything.
he did.
Wayne Baltimore Bracy.
Baltimore
You know,
Bracy.
Tom, Chris was talking about Gene Bartow being a great coach and what have you, and he was a promoter and all of this. And it started me to think, I wanted to ask Chris, what does he think makes a great coach with him coaching for 30 years?
Yeah.
But when he talked about being a promoter, it brought up Bruce Pearl in my
Mhm.
mind.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
Bruce is a promoter. He
He
gets
is.
everybody involved. You know, we
Right.
all know that recruiting is a key, but I think there's some other intangibles that go along with that.
I think the
Absolutely.
other thing is that the high school coaches were legendary. They stayed
Mhm.
in place.
Mhm.
Cap at Parker. I mean, Cap was a legend.
Yes.
And I'd even forgotten about the baseball stuff. Coach Jefferson over at Carver, Coach Scoggins at Hayes. I
Mhm.
mean, even if you didn't go to those schools, you knew about these guys,
Right.
and they were just Cap was, and then even at Lawson State, like if a guy couldn't get to 4 year, he went to Lawson State. Lawson State had a team that's so good they were on the cover of Sports Illustrated
Wow.
Yes.
with Johnny High. And
Yeah.
Johnny High was standing there on cover Sports Illustrated, and he had tassels on his shoes. And that's they went and played in the national game, and they beat some team out in Las Vegas 103 to 102.
Oh,
And they
wow.
asked Coach, what was the key to the game? He said defense. Chris, you back?
I'm back. I'm sorry, man.
No problem. No problem. I was going to ask you, most of these guys, I mean, we were just talking about the coaches and how legendary, and I think that helped to have that stability. You know, if you went to Parker, you were going to play for Cap. If you went to Hayes, you were going to play for Scoggins. Those guys were there. But how did integration change things? I remember some of the guys from Birmingham who came to play at Auburn, and in my opinion, they took their game away from them. They were used to running and shooting, and they had them doing this setup, come down and hold up two fingers and run to this spot, and then you can pass it over here. How do you feel about that, Chris?
Well, it was a transition for all of us and all the coaches, the older coaches, because number one, it was something new for them. They always wanted to try to get their players at the white university because most of them was going to the black university, and a lot of them was going out of town, but they would always find their way back home. So a lot of coaches would say, hey, if you go here, we need you to stay to be a pioneer and things of that nature. And the coaches was different because, African American coaches now, we're a bunch of screamers and shouters now when they coach you and things like that. But when you get white coaches, they had to be kind of careless of what they say to you and how they train you. We didn't have no strength program at Park High School, Tom. You know that. We didn't know nothing about lifting no weights. We didn't, some of the things, when we got to college, it changed us. The transition changed us. The game wasn't to our liking. It was a slow down, get the ball inside. All these great shooters, except for Andrew, he was smart. He went somewhere else where he could shoot the ball. So it did mess with a lot of people's game because most of those coaches back then, they focused getting the ball inside the Leon Douglas or getting inside the Miu King or whatever like that. And so it took away a person game. You didn't have the flair that you can come down, take the ball between your leg and throw it behind your back, and so they limit what you can do. So they made you what they call vanilla. Use a vanilla player now. So, but yeah, it was a different coaching, different atmosphere. Because you got to remember now, these were inner city kids who didn't have anything. We all came from humble beginning. We didn't have anything. We was fortunate enough to get a scholarship. Parents were happy that we got that scholarship, and then we had to make a change. That was a different culture that we was living and going in. Like what you talked about in your book, Tom, Walk On. I still have that book, and
Thank you.
things that the transition that you have to make, in life.
You do, and
Um,
you have to change and adapt. But go ahead.
Yeah, and a coach like Gene Bartow, you were asking earlier, Michael, about him, what made him a great coach, and Tom, you were saying about recruiting. Yeah, recruiting is the number one. Number two, you got to be able to listen to your team, and I think Coach Bartow, he was a great listener when it came to his players, and he was a great evaluator of talent. Coach didn't do a whole lot of swearing. He was more of a businessman. I mean, we didn't have 3-4 hour practice. We had 2 hours practice. Now at Parker High School, that was different. You'd be in the gym all day and all night. But that's another transition I had to get to. But Coach Bartow was a businessman because he was the athletic director. So he was out there, had to fundraise, had to get people to believe in the program. When he came to UAB, they didn't even have a basketball. So you got to put a team together.
Man,
You got to put a
that's
staff
right.
together. You got to put all the other sports together because the NCAA required you to have 13 intercollegiate sports. So he had to do all that himself, and then try to win, and be successful. So going out there, being able to spend all this time out there promoting and talking to people and building your program and building your team. So we didn't do a whole, what Coach Bartow, he believed in this. He believed that you had a job to do. And if you didn't do it, he was going to get somebody else. And that's all it was. We didn't have curfew. That time we used to be out there in the club all the time, having a good time down there. But he would tell you, when it came game time, you better be ready to play. And that was it. I mean, he didn't raise his voice. He used that bench as his discipline, like most older coaches knew how to do. And he kept everybody together, and that was the thing. And once they got rolling, then he didn't have to go out as much. People came to him.
Right.
Yeah. So
let me close out. I'm gonna close out with a quote from Cap Brown. I used to love Cap. Was the kind of guy that when we would have football practice, whatever, he'd come around, and we just like standing around listening to him. He had so much wisdom and stuff. And Cap was a referee. And
right.
He had been up in Nashville refereeing a SIAC game. And you remember Cap had that deuce and a quarter. He had a bad deuce and a quarter, boy.
With a tire on the back.
Yeah, with a tire on the back. Cap said he had gone in and called the game. And when he came back, it was a note on his car. Bad ride, call Mary. And a phone number.
Yep.
Anyway.
Hey, Tom, I wanted to say this, man, let you know that you remember Poole, right?
Yeah, I saw that, man.
You saw that? Okay, then. Well,
yeah. I was going to mention that earlier. Coach Poole, I think he's a legend at Parker. And,
yes, sir. The memorial and the
everybody
was
who
great.
went through there appreciate him, and I certainly did.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So, and let me just shout out. I want to give a shout out to Willie Brown.
Okay.
Your partner in crime, I always call him. And also to Eddie Too Tall Phillips. I named him Too Tall. So, and he was good. He played right tackle for us, boy. He was tough.
Yes, sir.
Tough. So, anyway, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you.
Oh, man, I enjoyed it, man. It brought back so many memories, and I appreciate you having me on the show. I'm glad you let me tell my story, and I enjoyed Michael, Barbara, and everybody.
And when I'm in Birmingham, I'm going to holler at you. Maybe we can grab lunch or something.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Chris.
Hey, thank you, Tom.
Okay. Let's give him a hand, guys. Well, my closing commentary for today, or as I see it, I recall a discussion I had with my mom. My mom has been gone now for 22 years this October 31st, as a matter of fact. It was 1974, this story, and I was feeling myself. You know, I was a senior in college and I had answers to questions that no one even asked. Whatever the subject to make my point, whatever the subject we were talking about, to make my point to my mom, I said, Mom, this is 1974. Things are changing. Her response was, I don't care if it is 1974. Right is right and wrong is wrong. I've been reminded of that these past couple of weeks of listening to the political talk as politicians try to excuse the behavior of their candidates who have gotten caught in their lies. I wish my mom was here to tell them right is right and wrong is wrong. So don't forget, Alabama Boys is on October 26th and 27th at the Goode Performing Arts Center on the campus of Auburn University, starring yours truly and Michael O'Neill. And that is how I see it on October 11th in the year 2022. That's our show for today. Thank the audience. We appreciate you. Thank Michael and Barbara. Thank our G-list guest, Chris Giles. It was wonderful. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, Sean Jones, the organizer and producer of the show, and I've Got a Minute. And remember to enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.